During a time of war, when the chief of the army says that we need manpower in the front line because we need to hold the Lebanese front and the Syrian front and the Hamas front, okay? I know we need to give him that manpower. And when we continue to try and exempt them, this is harming Israel's security. And so I cannot compromise with that. I will not.
That is former Likud member and Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sharren Haskel, and she is hopping mad. The majority of Israelis share her views on the issue she's talking about, the passage in the Knesset in mid-July of a law that purports to exempt all ultra-Orthodox men from army service. It is madness. Sharren has been a fierce opponent of any law exempting the ultra-Orthodox from service, and this issue, more than anything, is tearing Israel apart. Sharren Haskel is always, and always has been, a force of nature. Articulate, passionate, and exactly the type of woman we want and so desperately need in public life in Israel. We have a feisty and fascinating discussion about the draft law and so much more. We focus on the dire security situation facing Israel and how Prime Minister Netanyahu has forsaken the founding values of the modern state of Israel: equality, liberal democracy, service, security. Forsaken? Yes, it's a strong word, and I use it because he has made it clear that he will do anything to preserve his power. And for that, he needs the ultra-Orthodox voting bloc on side. And for that, he felt he had to give them a legal exemption from IDF service. In Israel, that's simply incomprehensible. I'm Vivian Berkovich, former Canadian ambassador to Israel. Let's do this. Tuesday, July 18th. It's about 11:20 in Israel. Sharren Haskel, former Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you so much for making time for State of Tel Aviv and Beyond today.
Thank you very much, Vivian, for inviting me to this interview. I really appreciate it. And I think it's really important to let, the English community here in Israel and overseas knowing everything that's happening here in politics, in foreign affairs, in foreign relations. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to them.
I'm thrilled that you made the time. So let's get to it, shall we? Sharren, you have attracted a lot of attention in the media, certainly in Israel, in recent days. And the reason for that primarily is that, you can rephrase this if you wish, at the last minute, when what we call the Torah Foundation Law in Hebrew, which effectively, possibly, depending on how you interpret it, recognizes full-time Torah study as being equivalent to IDF service. And that, in effect, gives a free pass, or as I say, get out of jail card, to the ultra-Orthodox haredi community. We now have about 100,000 haredi men in Israel, out draft age, who are dodging and not serving, at the same time as we have a very extreme shortage of troops in the IDF, upwards of 20,000 at the moment, and just going up and up and up. And they're saying, no, we're not going to serve. And you said, when the vote came to the Knesset last Wednesday, I believe, or was it Tuesday?
I've already lost track.
I know.
But
It's
I think
just
it was. Yeah, I think it was on Tuesday morning.
It was, because the next day was the seat freezing of the arrest. So last Tuesday, you said, Adkan, up until this point, I'm not supporting this any longer. I'm leaving Likud. Why? Why did you wait until the last minute, as you've been asked many times in the Israeli media?
I want to lay a couple of foundations. The first one is that 2 years ago, when my party decided to join the Likud party and to emerge together, okay, I already told Gideon Sa'ar that I'm not going back with them to the Likud party. I felt like my independent voice during this time of war is very important, especially because the Likud party was pushing the exemption bill. that would exempt the Ultra-Orthodox from serving in the army. I knew this was going to be a serious battle. Okay. And I knew there has to be an independent voice. And that's why I told him already 2 years ago, I'm not going back with them. Since then, for a year and a half now, I've been fighting and battling in order to push out and to make sure that the exemption bill does not pass. And, I did many things in order to continue to put it in the top of the headlines, to create a group of parliament members in the coalition that were against it so that they wouldn't have a majority to pass it. Because throughout this year and a half, if they would have had the majority, they would have passed it in 24 hours. And only these actions, okay, of continuing to push it in the media, social media, in the headlines, with keeping this group together. Because you need to understand, there were many conversations with those people, many offers were put on the table in order for them to vote in favor of this bill. To the point that about 2 months ago, we reached the point that we were 60-60. Okay. Meaning only one more need to abstain or not come, and this bill would have passed. Now, Vivian, I was very clear from the start. If this bill pass, and we know, how it put in danger our safety, our security, regardless being unfair. And I say that as a combat soldier, a female combat soldier who served during the Second Intifada. I see that as a privilege to serve my country and to serve my people. During a time of war, when the chief of the army says that we need manpower in the front line because we need to hold the Lebanese front and the Syrian front and the Hamas front, okay? I know we need to give him that manpower. And when we continue to try and exempt them, this is harming Israel's security. And so I cannot compromise with that. I will not. And so from the start, I said that if they pass this bill, I will reconsider my partnership in the government, and I'll take measures, even if it means I will have to resign. Now, if that would have happened a year and a half ago, and they would have been able to pass this bill, okay, I would have resigned. If that would have passed 6 months ago, I would have resigned. And when they bring that kind of bill 2 days before the dissolvement of the parliament through the back door, okay, convincing two members that were meant to vote against, okay, to abstain or to vote in favor, okay, I didn't know I'm going to resign until the last minute because I didn't know whether that will pass or not. But you saw the commotion in the parliament. You saw the fight. I was absolutely heartbroken. I was angry, Vivian. I was really angry. And as soon as I left the chamber, after my vote, I voted against. I waited. I saw the vote passed. And I went out in front of the media and told them that I'm resigning from my position in the government. Not from the coalition, not from the parliament, but from the government who have passed a legislation like that during a time of war.
I'm going to take a moment here to remind our listeners of the chaos of that day in the Knesset, when Prime Minister Netanyahu entered the chamber moments before the vote on the draft law to shouts of shame. And after 2 minutes of humiliation, he left just before the vote to shouts of, "Go, get out." We covered that episode in a written piece published in State of Tel Aviv, which chronicled carefully the coalition shenanigans of the final 2 weeks of the Knesset session. The link to that piece is in the show notes. But for those of you who missed it, here's a short bit from the clip of Netanyahu's walk of shame on the day that his coalition voted to exempt haredi men from IDF service. The Prime Minister enters the Knesset chamber, heckled, as I said, to cries of shame from the opposition. It truly is a walk of shame. Immediately after that vote was taken, Sharren Haskel exited the chamber to speak with the Knesset press pool. Her emotion and anger are palpable. This was when she announced her resignation from the government. The short clip is not subtitled, but I'll tell you what she says. She says she resigns from the government with a very heavy heart, that this law allowing the haredim to shirk the IDF draft and national service does not align with Israel's core national values. It hurts the state and its ability to defend itself. It hurts those who have served for 3 years of war and given so much. We edited the clip just to give you a feel for the moment. This was recorded by one of Sharren Haskel's aides. In the moment, raw and real.
אני עומדת בפניכם היום בכאב לב גדול מאוד, אחרי שחוק פטור לעריקים למעשה עבר במליאת הכנסת. החוק הזה הוא שפוגע בביטחון המדינה, חוק שפוגע במשרתים, חוק שפוגע באלו שכבר 3 שנים, שהיום בהעברת החוק הזה פגעה באנשים הכי חשובים שעומדים 3 שנים ומגנים על מדינת ישראל. תודה רבה.
So I just want to go back, though, to 2 years ago when you took the position with Gideon Sa'ar of Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. He, of course, was Minister of Foreign Affairs. He returned to the embrace of the Likud party. Are you saying that you did not rejoin Likud at that time?
No, they've joined back the Likud, and I told Gideon from the start that I'm not going back. We had certain agreements in regards to that. And to be honest, I'm not opposing, the Likud. I'm not a opposition to the Likud, and I'm not an opposition to Prime Minister Netanyahu. I backed him, and my opinion, we did a couple of podcasts in the past couple of years in regards to Israel's security, to the war, Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, foreign policy, anti-Semitism. We talk about these things. I stand behind what I've said, and I'll continue to support and back the government on those issues, because that's, we are 100% on the right side of the history in those terms. This is over an internal issue that I disagree. This is about the Ultra-Orthodox and how they conduct themselves during a time of war after Israel experienced the 7th of October. And I tell you, Vivian, the 7th of October came at, one of the main reasons, if I look back, is because of ideological concessions. Okay? And when you make ideological concessions about security, this is what happens. And if we've learned anything from the 7th of October, is that we are not allowed anymore to make any ideological concessions to do with our safety and our security here in Israel.
Yes, any ideological concessions or just opportunistic concessions.
Yeah.
Query, I'm not, we could have a really great sidebar debate about whether it's ideological or just rank opportunism, but we'll save that for another day, shall we? But let's go back to last week and the Knesset vote. I'd love to know who the two wobbly MKs are, who you were wondering until the last minute how they'd vote, but I won't do that to you.
I think most of the Israeli public know, and I think that they'll come into accounts with them. It's not my job to do that.
Of course not. I'm just, kind of, being a little little gossipy here on my podcast, and I knew that you would high road it with me, so thank you for that. But in the chamber, and I watched the proceedings that day, and there was so much. You talk about your own rage and anger, and you literally walked out, and I saw you at the mics when you walked out speaking to the Israeli media. But what I saw, and I really appreciate you filling the blanks, because I think that this kind of drama is really important. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu walked into the chamber, the Knesset chamber, as he usually does, entering by a side door. He looked very somber, expressionless, purposeful. And, he walks a few meters to his seat, which is right, what I call front row center at a rock concert, in the Knesset chamber, which is they're seated in a horseshoe, not like in Canada, where we both come from, where you have House of Commons and it's one side and the other side, right? No.
Yeah.
And that horseshoe is metaphorically really meaningful, I think, because it's messy. It's not which side of the house are you on. There's a lot of interaction, and there's good and bad to that. Prime Minister Netanyahu walks towards his seat. There are a number of members of Knesset who literally, it's like the Pope. They reach, to shake his hand or touch the robe. He goes and sits down. On his right is Minister of Justice Yariv Levin, the author of the judicial reform legislation that, in my view, plunged Israel into chaos in early 2023, leading to October 7th. And I think that's pretty well established.
Yeah.
And on the other side is his Minister of Defense, Israel Katz.
Yeah.
There's very little interaction between any of them. It's clear that Netanyahu is basically serving time for a few minutes, coming in, letting the opposition yell at him, taunt him, humiliate him, and he gives them their moment. And then just before the vote, he leaves. He's escorted out of the chamber by his security detail, and then the vote proceeds. So Prime Minister Netanyahu clearly knew that he wasn't needed in the chamber for a vote. They had it locked down, right? Because if it was razor thin, he'd have stayed for the vote.
Yeah.
He knew they're okay. But what was more significant to me, you are Benjamin Netanyahu, former Sayeret Matkal, elite combat soldier. You're the brother of Yoni Netanyahu, the only elite combat soldier who died in the incredible rescue operation at Entebbe Airport 50 years ago. And you are doing this. You are handing our ability to defend ourselves. You are creating this autonomous, powerful sector in society in Israel, the Ultra-Orthodox, who now comprise 15%. And you're telling them, you don't have to serve.
Vivian, I want to clarify.
Okay.
This is not him telling the ultra-Orthodox they do not have to serve. It's worse than that. You need to understand that all the ultra-Orthodox parliament members have children and many grandchildren who are requested by the police to be arrested because they broke the law. In Israel, every Jew have to serve in the military. If you do not serve, there's a law. They broke the law. So what they did in this legislation is they legislate that only those from their families, because they are ultra-Orthodox, will not be arrested when they break the law. This is pardoning and telling the police they cannot arrest their grandchildren and their son and their great-grandchildren while they know they broke the law. They put their family and their community above the law.
Absolutely. I just want to raise this, minor linguistic point that in Hebrew, there's, depending on what your political views are and your view of this particular thing, this Torah law, you either call it Chok Yesodut Torah, foundational law for Torah, or you call it Chok Hishtamtut, which is the shirker, the draft evaders law. Yeah. I'm in the Hishtamtut camp. And I also want to add to that, because I think that's really significant. And we've seen, particularly in this last period of Netanyahu's government, over the last 10 years or so, this continuum that he keeps going along, which bolsters the ultra-Orthodox society as an autonomous, very powerful society. And they don't just get to evade law and legal responsibilities. They also receive a lot of money, but we're going to leave that for another day. I want to go back to the security issue that you raise. I think it was the night before the vote. And on Channel 12, which of course is a leftist, elitist, anarchist, deep state television station, according to the Likud party and Benjamin Netanyahu, they had some reporters phoning ultra-Orthodox members of Knesset, who, of course, they knew were going to vote for this. And they asked them, how many grandchildren do you have who are going to benefit from this? Because
who are wanted by the police right now because they did not obey the law.
But there are also the grandchildren, or maybe it's the great-grandchildren, because they have very large families. Yeah. It was also, the question they were asking about was a subsidy that the ultra-Orthodox were demanding and received for daycare. So you have reservists who are serving, and their families can't afford daycare.
Yeah. And the ultra-Orthodox get even priority on enrollment. I mean, it's insanity.
So
Those who
that's,
paid the
yeah,
greatest prices, family, economically, in the injuries, they are put aside. And I think, that was the anger that I had after this week of terrible legislation
terrible.
that made my people, I'll say it, my tribe, families and friends who have paid so much in order to serve our country, to make sure that our country is protected. And they felt deserted. I felt deserted as a right winger, a very ideological, very hawkish on security, a very clear voice of economical liberties, reduction in taxes, regulations, bureaucracy.
Yeah.
We felt deserted and abandoned by the right wing parties because they do not represent us anymore. And I felt homeless. I mean, Vivian, do you understand? For 11 years, I've been in parliament, a very ideological voice. I know my stuff. I know at any case, you bring me legislation, I'll tell you if it's right or left. Okay. And I'm very clear about my votes, about my legislations. And it's heartbreaking to me to say in the past, I'm homeless. And this is how there's a huge crowd now, people
Right.
who feel abandoned, like they don't have a political home because they do not watch their back.
Well, welcome to the club, is all I can say. I personally find the right-left distinction meaningless in the current environment, not just here, but in many places. To me, it's just about honor and principle.
Yeah.
And I think that what we've saw, not just with respect to this law last week, but this just blitz of laws that were shoved down our throat that I think caught everyone by surprise, including the media,
Including me.
and you sit in there.
I mean,
So it was a real blitzkrieg. It was a real full frontal attack, to use a war metaphor. And there wasn't even time, and they knew this, there wasn't even time to organize, to protest, to do anything.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
to me, horrific. But I want to just focus in the few minutes we have left on the raw security concerns and put our anguish aside. I mean, this is also in the context of the IDF Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, appointed by Prime Minister Netanyahu. He's been calling fire for a while. Early April, he spoke to the security cabinet and he said, you are placing very unrealistic demands on the IDF. You are continuing to exempt ultra-Orthodox young men, and I'm waving 10 red flags here before you. We are going to collapse in on ourselves. Okay? He continues to issue these warnings, and he says it publicly too, which is very significant. And then last week, the bill passed. He wrote a letter to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he said, we cannot even deliver the basic threshold security to the people of Israel that is required because you are placing outrageous demands upon us operationally, and you are limiting our recruitment capability. You're building settlements in the West Bank, and each settlement requires roads, requires security, and that's provided by the IDF. We have this multi-front war going on that doesn't seem to be dying down anytime soon. We have not got the manpower that we need. And he was very clear, and I thought that was so significant because the letter he wrote that was publicized to Prime Minister Netanyahu last week before the vote, and all of his previous warnings, they do this. They remove the plausible deniability of Prime Minister Netanyahu. He can never stand up now and say, but they didn't tell me, as he did with October 7th. I didn't know. Eyal Zamir has made sure single-handedly that the Prime Minister knows and the public is aware. And you may not have caught this, but one more thing I want to throw out because it's so significant. Also it was Sunday or Monday night before the vote, there was a show on Channel 12 News, and they went down to the border with Jordan, and they were speaking to a Rav Shatz, the head of the community security for one of the small farming communities in that area, right on the border. And he took the reporters around and showed them the fence. All that there is along the Jordan border is a chain link fence. And they find a hole. They literally go to the hardware store, the IDF, and they bring twist ties, those plastic ties to repair it.
I know.
I know you know.
I've spent some time there.
But there is apparently a constant flow of weapons and individuals infiltrating Israel from Jordan.
Yeah.
They do it by drone, they do it by human, mule, they throw it over the border. There are many different ways. There's literally no security from the IDF along that border because we don't have it. There's no fence, there's nothing.
Yeah.
This gentleman said, we rely on the Jordanian army to protect us. And he said that when the next attack comes, he said it's not if, it's when.
Mm-hmm.
And talked about how he had taught his wife to use a semi-automatic. I'm not leaving my wife and children and going out to defend my community if I don't know that they can defend themselves.
Yeah.
It was very moving, dramatic, and, my heart skipped a beat.
It's mind-blowing.
It's
Vivian.
mind-blowing, and we have all these security experts out there, and I just want you to comment on this before we wrap, saying we are, from a security perspective, in a worse and more dire situation than we were on October 6th. And then I have the Prime Minister sitting there expressionlessly just before the vote and then walking out. I can't.
So, you were heartbroken. This is what I felt. I
Yes.
was anxious and heartbroken and angry, really angry. Vivian, 2 years ago, I put a proposal of a compromise, and we're willing to compromise as long as the IDF received the manpower they requested. I put a proposal to build yeshivas on the borders. So you give them the training they need. You build a yeshiva in Metula, in Rosh Hanikra. You build a yeshiva in Biranit. All along, every 10, 15 kilometers of the border, you build a yeshiva. This one is of Kanievsky, and this one is of Gur, and this one is of other ones, okay? Chabad. They all do the basic training, everything. They are in charge of guarding it. And that will literally give Israel a secured border strategy, that those yeshivas are taking part in the military force, giving the manpower needed to seal Israel. And it gives so much more manpower to do certain missions, like in Lebanon and in Syria, in the Navy, or, the Air Force. And that's an incredible solution. They keep the bubble of the Torah study of the yeshiva with their own rabbi in the base and their own kosherness in the bases and everything. And they also contribute to Israel's security in both ways, physically and spiritually. But they didn't want to listen about it. They didn't want to know about it. They refused to accept it. You know what they told me? They told me, we're not going to go with a plan like that. That's going to be tens of thousands of people going into the army. We're only going to settle with a few hundreds, maybe 2,000. It's insanity that they can think this way during a time of war. And I tell you, it feels to me like the Prime Minister have been abducted by those ultra-Orthodox, that, the right-wing camp has been abducted by the ultra-Orthodox. And what I decided to do is to build an ideological home, a political home for the right-winger that will not compromise on Israel's security, that refuse to be abducted by a sector that wants to contribute to the economy and to the security of our country. It's insanity. There isn't another word for that.
No, it's madness. Sharren, I see it somewhat differently. I see it as not having been abducted. I see them as being very responsible and intelligent agents, and they chose to sell their principles for power. To me, it's that simple. They weren't abducted. They know what they're doing, and they don't care. I just don't have any other way of explaining it. Sharren, we're now into the 3 months away from an election. I have my views as to whether or not that election may actually happen or be postponed for urgent war security reasons. But assuming the election does go ahead, and I certainly hope it does, you're not leaving the political stage. So
No,
what should we be looking for from you?
So
Aside from fiery rhetoric, which is great, but
all the Israeli English speakers, okay, who are on the right side of the map, who wants to see and be part of a political home that speaks about the ideology, okay, about the ideas, and not the people, to come and join Israel First. This is a party, this is a platform that I've built. I'm very proud, and this is a platform that is calling also all of the members, all of the people, the good people on the right who wants to contribute to Israel, that wants to go into politics, to come and join forces. We went out with a campaign now to call Yuli and Iluz and Handel and Miluimnikim and so many other ideological groups on the right side of the map to come and join forces together, to come and build together this political home. It's called Israel First. We're going to run in the next elections, and you can go on social media. We've got a website. You can go and get some more information about it. And please join us. Come. I know that many of you, might feel deserted and abandoned, especially after the last 2 weeks. But I promise you that this home is not going to be about the people. It's going to be about the ideas, about the values, about our
Right.
ideology, and not to compromise on it.
You've officially started this party. You've done all the registrations and everything. Do you have a list? Do you have a group of people who are behind you, or is it the Sharren Haskel show for now?
Well, there's a few that I'm having conversations with. I'm sure you will hear the news next week and the following week about more and more people who are joining in. There's a big demand out of the public, and many people who wants to run in politics are willing to come and join forces. So, yes.
Sharren, I want to ask you more. I think I might get in trouble with your guy who's arranging your time today. But because the next question I really want to ask is
Yeah.
why you did not join another party rather than start your own.
I'll say this, Vivian. I'll say this. There are many people, I think maybe even 70 people, ideological people on the right, that I've been having conversation for the last year and a half
Wow.
since the exemption bill started rolling in the parliament. And though in those conversations, many people are very afraid. They're very afraid to jump in the water and start pushing, that train. And so after, I tell you, a year and a half of conversations with many of them, I also told them, I'm building this train. I'm pushing this train. We're heading out. Come and join. I have zero ego. If there's more powerful of them, they can lead it as well. It's okay. But we have to start rolling it. The people here in Israel feel deserted. They have to know that we build for them a home, not to keep it in secret, not to try and build agreements and things like that, but just to start rolling it.
Sharren Haskel, always full of surprises, really, because I thought we were going to just speak about certain laws, and you're so exuberant, engaged, intense, and I really appreciate you making time, because I know your life is a bit of a waterfall at the moment, dealing with all of this, and you're the mother to 3 lovely young children, but it's always a pleasure to amplify your voice and to hear what you've got going on. Thank you, and I wish you success
Thank
in
you
this
so
venture.
much, Vivian. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate
Thank you
it. I
very
appreciate
much.
the work you're doing, and we're going to talk between now and the election.
Okay. I'd
all
love
right.
to. I'd
Thank
love
you.
to. Thanks a lot, Vivian.
Sharren and her Israel First party, they're one to watch. In the meantime, as I record this closing, Sharren Haskel has been summoned to Lahav 433, the special police unit in Israel that investigates serious fraud and other such matters. There is an investigation being led by the Attorney General, actually requested by the Attorney General, into the propriety of the Knesset election of the state comptroller. Allegations are that the Prime Minister's office may have inappropriately influenced or attempted to influence the votes of individual Knesset members to support the coalition's choice of candidate for the role. We'll leave it at that. I'm not going down this rabbit hole now. I just wanted to be sure to give you, the listener, the full picture of what's going on in Israel, the world of Sharren Haskel, and just how unseemly, even for Israel, political life has become. It's an unceasing flow of, sewage is the word that comes to mind. I'm pretty sure that Sharren is on the side of the good guys in this one, and I look forward to seeing her sitting in the next Knesset with a new government and a truly diverse reflection of Israelis. And yes, that includes women. Thanks for being here, as always. Signing off from somewhere in Central Europe as I make my way to Canada. In the meantime, stay safe and stay cool. We love hearing from you, so please comment on our website, stateoftelaviv.com, or send us a note to vivian@stateoftelaviv.com. That's VIVIAN@stateoftelaviv.com. And if you go to our website, stateoftelaviv.com, you can find the subscribe button and take it from there. Hope that you do that. On behalf of the State of Tel Aviv core team, Jan Zabo, our creative, graphic, visual, and marketing man, Amir White, producer and editor extraordinaire, sound guy, who is also impressively patient with me and my boomer tech deficiencies, and our social media manager who pitches in on everything. Thank you, Maya Naftalin. Thanks to the team, and thank you, listeners, for being here. Until next time, stay safe.